Welcome to the podcast, everyone. It's Greg Schenkel from Unique Training and Development, Frontline Leadership. It's at this time of year when this is originally being broadcast that we usually start having conversations with companies, both about their plans for leadership development in the fall, which is always that back to school mentality, or sometimes they're in their budgeting season for the next year or the year ahead. And I just wanted to let you know that we're open to have those conversations with you, and all you have to do is visit us on our website at uniquedevelopment.com. Now, my guest today is someone who I've been working with actually for, it's probably getting close to 10 years. Maybe it's 7 years or so. And I've had the pleasure of interacting with our guest probably at 3 different organizations during that time frame. And so she is a client of ours and has been a client of ours for many years. And I've always been impressed with her ability to balance both the strategic thinking side of the role that she's in, but also the pragmatic frontline side of the role that she's in. So let me introduce you to our guest today. It's Seanna Pickard, and she is a certified human resources leader for more than 20 years of progressive experience in HR leadership, business partnering, and organizational transformation. She's worked with frontline employees all the way up to the board of directors, helping organizations build stronger workplace cultures, navigate complex change, and develop the people practices that support accountability and engagement. Currently, she is at the Federal Bridge Corporation. I bet you're curious, what does the Federal Bridge Corporation do? And we're going to find out. She is their human resources director, and her experience spans an impressive range: labor relations, strategic workforce planning, performance management, policy development, workplace investigations, and organizational restructuring in both union and non-union environments. What sets Seanna apart is her reputation for bringing a practical, people-centered approach to challenges, bringing a thoughtful perspective on the evolving role of human resources and the importance of balancing organizational effectiveness with respect, fairness, and empathy. And that's something that Seanna has exuded, so nothing I'm saying is not true in terms of her personal brand. So glad that you're able to join me, Seanna. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Greg, for inviting me and for that lovely intro. You make it sound very impressive.
You know what? If we could all just have someone introduce us with the highlights, it would be a really great experience for us. The other thing I want people to know is if you do want to reach out to Seanna for any reason, well, if you want to learn more about bridges and bridge tolls, you can certainly reach out at federalbridge.ca. That's the website for Federal Bridge Corporation. Seanna has a unique spelling in her name, which you'll see in the show notes, but it's Seanna. So if you're going to look her up on LinkedIn, Seanna Pickard, but spelled in that very unique way. So Seanna, you better start off by saying, because before we started doing business with you, I had no idea that there was this corporation called the Federal Bridge Corporation. Tell us a little bit about what that company does.
For sure. The Federal Bridge Corporation is a Canadian-owned Crown corporation. We own, manage, and operate international bridges between Canada and the United States. And so really, we're a vital economic link between Canada and the U.S., moving hundreds of millions of dollars daily in cross-border commerce. We are headquartered in Ottawa, report to the Parliament of Canada through the Minister of Transport, and we try to ensure the safety and security of cross-border transport.
Okay, so really, people, when you're doing a border crossing, you may be going over one of Federal Bridge Corporation's crossings, and so you're used to rolling up to a toll booth, either an automated system or paying a toll, and then you're going across that structure and entering the other side, and vice versa. So, Seanna, I've been always impressed, admittedly at a distance probably, because you and I have never really talked about this, but I've been impressed with how you've managed your career. And I'm just curious, if you don't mind, walking us through the journey of the types of organizations you've been in, the types of roles you've been in, and just how that has shaped you to where you're at today.
Absolutely. So I started off in human resources in Ontario. I was working for a very small organization where I was the only person in human resources, and it was a great experience. You were doing everything and anything, and I thought I had a great position, but I was balancing a career with a partner that also wanted to advance their career, and so we moved to Alberta in our 20s. And that was the first of many moves as we pursued career goals and balanced our evolution, I guess, professionally and personally together. So in my career, I guess I've chosen to take on both roles that provided HR breadth, working in smaller companies. But at the heart of it, I really haven't really stayed in one position for much longer than 5 years in the past, because as I was developing myself and moving into the more advanced roles and trying to become a leader, I knew I needed to try new industries. I wanted to keep challenging myself to work in different departments under different governing environments with different employment laws and regulations, and to really keep learning and challenging myself. So I was able to be exposed to a variety of organizational structures and business approaches and company cultures. My experience in very large HR teams enabled me to learn from subject matter experts. And wow, were those leaders inspiring? But really, the decision to leave the comfort of human resources and move into an operations management role is where I learned the most about leadership.
Oh, well, you've got, now you've intrigued people. It's almost like there's a commercial break coming up and we have to find out, what did Seanna do next? So making that crossover, Seanna, is something that it's scary on one level because, and again, for the audience's benefit, I think, you realize that, and my father, Irwin, who worked at General Motors for more than 3 decades before he retired, and then he had started this business that I bought from him. He said that, he came up through sales and then sales and marketing back when GM used to sell like fractional horsepower motors for appliances, like little drive motors for washing machines and stuff, up to the point where they were selling armored personnel carriers. But his point was he was most of the time, after he got out of the sales end of things, most of the time he's in a staff function where you're advising. There is something different about being the one who's accountable for delivering an operational output. So please tell us about what was that experience like crossing from HR to operations, and now I think you're back in HR, but what did you gain from that? And how did you find it even going into the fires of operations?
You're 100% right. It is a scary experience, right? So you become this expert in one field, and then people see you and think, oh, wow, I think that you're an expert in that field. That's great, but there's skills that I want you to try in a different role. And the person who put me in it believed in me, but wow, is it ever challenging and scary because you're suddenly starting to manage an operation that I had no experience in. And I really needed to leverage leadership, and I couldn't rely on expertise anymore. And so it taught me what the business needs of trusted human resource business partners. Mm-hmm. The real value comes from enabling the business, trying to truly understand how an organization makes money, how it succeeds, and the importance of its people. It really changed my perspective on leadership.
Yeah, and that probably helps you when you're coaching and advising other people on how to do that well. I'm curious, because what you're really laying in there also is a layer of accountability, which I know is something that you really focus on. And it's very easy, I think, sometimes, or at least I've noticed in support functions, to go, well, I'm doing my job duties. And it's like, yeah, but those job duties are affecting someone else's outcome who's actually got to deliver something for a customer or something that generates money. And I'm wondering, if you were advising other more junior HR professionals who are coming up, what would you tell them about that whole idea of their relationship to the business and how to increase their own accountability to the business?
We're here to serve. There is no role for human resources if you're not making other people's lives easier and better and adding to the bottom line. And so, as human resources leaders, I really believe we need to choose to believe in our people. And that means letting them try new things, letting them learn from their own mistakes, encouraging creativity and growth, not expecting people to always play it safe, because not playing it safe is what results in significant wins. That doesn't mean your HR life is easy, though. Because there will be mistakes made, and it's figuring out how do you engage with and grow your people so they want to keep giving back to the organization, and do it in a way that encourages engagement throughout the organization.
Yeah. So really HR, and I used to believe, Seanna, that it was a hierarchy of customers essentially in an organization, right? So there's operations, and then in the case of a manufacturing, but even in your business, like maintenance supports operations, HR supports operations. And then actually my perspective changed a little bit. Instead of like, this is my customer, this is my collaborator. In other words, it's not that I serve them, because that makes it somewhat transactional, but it's like we're here to collaborate together, maintenance, operations, human resources, finance. Like we're all supposed to be collaborating to deliver something of value to the customer and to our team. And I think that collaboration mindset takes a while to set in, because sometimes even the customer, so to speak, treats the other departments as if they're suppliers. I just wondered if you had a take on that.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. We are collaborators in the business success. When human resources is designing and delivering programs and policies, you want to be thinking about what does success look like in this organization? What's the culture that we want to create in this organization, and build those policies and practices to support that. If you do that, then the flip side is when the customer comes asking for help, support, and wants a service, you will have created policies and practices that you know are fair, equitable, transparent, and are going to lead to better business results for the whole organization.
Right, for sure. So, now as we still think back to your journey, because you said, things go well, sometimes things don't go well. I always go, you're either winning or you're learning, right, is the expression. I'm curious, if you don't mind, something on the one hand, because when you're, I'm going to say young, not that you're not young anymore, Seanna, but I'm definitely not young anymore. But when you're early in your career, until you've had a few wins that really cement your track record, right? I heard, by the way, I like baseball, even though it's boring. And I know we just finished the World Cup, which is also soccer. Sometimes that's boring to some people. Some people call it the beautiful game. But one expression I heard when you're baseball players, once you've played 1,000 games, or once you've been to the plate 1,000 times, your stats really tell how you're doing, right? But early on, you just have promise, you have potential. And I'm wondering, when for you did things click that you were like, that built your confidence, that you were onto something because of something that went well? And then if you want to share an example of something where you learned from something that didn't go as well, I'd be interested in both takes from you on that.
For sure. So maybe we'll start with something where I was newer in my career. I had maybe the imposter syndrome. I wasn't sure that I truly had earned yet my stripes.
Yeah.
And I was working with a whole bunch of people that I looked up to. So I wasn't quite sure that I was as confident and ready for the role maybe as others viewed in me. And so it was in Alberta at the time. The Alberta economy was absolutely booming, and I was working for an electrical utility that was looking for skilled power line technicians. And it was clear that because of the booming economy, there wasn't going to be enough power line technicians to adequately meet the requirements to keep the lights on in Alberta, if we were thinking kind of 5 years out. And so senior leaders had talked about it, and they decided, you know what, we need to recruit internationally. Awesome, great, this is super exciting. Well, they came to me and said, okay, well, make international
go get them
possible. We need 20 of these workers, and we need them within the next 18 months. And so, as someone who had never worked in international recruitment, we had to find which country makes sense to recruit from. And so we ended up finding, okay, we're going to go to the Philippines. And they said, okay, go to the Philippines. Take a manager with you, Seanna. Find us these 20 power line technicians that are going to come here and bring their whole families here, and figure out a way to get them their Canadian trade certification. And I kind of need them up and running within a year, and figure out how to bring them to an Alberta economy in the dead of winter.
With
and
high cost of living. Yeah.
Make them feel confident. And so I remember feeling completely overwhelmed. And every day it was like, I'm going to put on a brave face and pretend I know what I'm doing, while my brain was just
swimming,
rapidly swimming. And what did I forget? And so in the end, we were able to go to the Philippines. We recruited amazing candidates. We were able to bring them to Canada within the timeline set. We kind of had a full year of onboarding, get them used to Canadian laws and regulations, and figure out how to train them to pass the Canadian trade certifications. It all did work out. And when I finally finished that, and the day that we were told, hey, they all passed the trade certification, I remember sighing and thinking, oh my goodness, I didn't think I could do this. And we just hit every target that we did. And I did it out of the box, and I didn't have something to follow. And that cemented you can do hard things.
Yeah.
You just need to believe in yourself. And when you don't believe in yourself, it's really helpful when you had someone who did believe in you and your organization and coached and mentored and encouraged. And that for me was I can do this. And that's the kind of leader I want to be. So that
you had the oh crap moment married up with the encouragement. And then once you finally like ran that gauntlet and had success, then it flipped the switch and you saying, okay, I could probably do other hard things and maybe I can circumvent the panicky stage, right, that comes on early on. Just on that note, Seanna, one of the things, because I think that covers both things. That covers both the like, when did your confidence go up, and also something that was very difficult. Was there anything else you wanted to share in that, or did that cover it sounded like it covered both sides of that coin?
Yeah, I think it did. Sure.
Okay. So I'm curious, because you've been in a few different organizations, partly because you needed to support your partner and you needed to move around. And so even if you wanted to stay in an organization, you might not have been able to. But what it did do is it gave you like this taste test of the buffet of corporate cultures. And I'm curious if, as you've thought about that, because you've been an outsider for a while in any organization that you come into, I'm curious whether you've processed the differences that you've seen in terms of what made some of the best cultures so good, and on the other hand, what made some of the ones where it wasn't as constructive as it could have been. Can you share any of those insights?
That's a really great question. So I think working in a wide variety of different companies and cultures, every company has had really great things that you take from it, and you think, wow, this was unique about this company, and this is something that I want to incorporate in the future. There were two things that I experienced and consistently through companies, and maybe some companies did it more than others, but that set them apart as an organization that felt good to work for. And there's three things, I guess, in my career that have led to me having a mantra. I kind of have three words that I live by, and if you ask anybody I work with now, they can tell you what Seanna's three words are, because I better
learn this. I better know this for the next time we're together. Okay.
I say them all the time. And I live by, is what I'm doing fair? Is it equitable? And is it transparent? And if I can do those three things in every single decision, then I know I'm staying true to my own values, and I'm going to do what's in the best interest of the company. And people can feel safe working with me because it's a consistent approach. And so creating an environment that's psychologically safe to challenge, to voice ideas, to ask questions, to admit mistakes without fear of humiliation or punishment or retaliation is really important to me. Yeah. So I love those environments. And then the other thing that I really love that not everybody loves as much as me is radical candor. Mm-hmm. And so I worked in an environment early in my career where I had a failing. I applied on a job. I was sure I was going to get it, and I didn't. And I didn't get it because I had taken it for granted. I thought I was a shoo-in, and I didn't earn it. Yeah. And having someone sit me down from a place of giving, like from a place of humanity and building genuine human relationships, they sat down and gave me a very clear debrief on, Seanna, you have the skills, you have the ability, but you took it for granted and you didn't earn it. And here's what you need to do. It was one of the hardest things that I've ever had to go through as a person, because you have this emotional reaction that someone's like, you weren't ready and you're not getting the promotion and you need to sit through this conversation for half an hour. But in the same respect, they were right, because I knew they cared about me as an individual, and they were giving me information that allowed me to be challenged directly while still caring personally about me. And in the end, it made me change the whole way that I approach challenges and cautions. And so organizations that can balance those two things, I really enjoy. And it's something that I try to bring to most
Yeah,
organizations too.
no, it's really good, and it's funny that you say that because even I would think of our interactions back when we were doing business the very first time we met. I would say, yeah, you were known for being. I'm not even going to use the word blunt because blunt always comes with it with a negative emotional content to it. But you're right; it's just being very candid and open about at least what you thought about what was going on. So that was helpful. Um, I know we're deviating a little bit. By the way, our audience members probably know by now. I tend to give our guests at least a starter set of questions, but then based on the conversation, kind of weave and around a little bit. And I've already done that here with you, Seanna. I'm wondering when you think of, one of the models we're talking about these days is decision-making waste, where higher level leaders are really getting involved in making decisions and solving problems one or two, sometimes three layers lower in the organization that they should be. And I wondered whether you have a take on that, both from a perspective of, oh, absolutely, it happens, which is usually what we'll hear. But I'm wondering how you've seen people sort of either get out of that or help rectify it, or really help to clarify accountability. Just any thoughts you have about why more senior leaders do things one or two levels lower than they should, and why those. What's your take on that, Seanna?
It absolutely happens. And I think it's human nature for it to happen. I think employee engagement and employee empowerment go hand in hand. If employees feel that they are believed in and that they're valued and trusted to address the issues that come across their desk, I think that they're going to outperform their job description consistently. But when we as leaders, and I'm going to put myself in this grouping because I've done both of these things, when we as leaders micromanage others, working below the level we're supposed to, I've found personally that it's usually for one of two reasons. Either the leader feels more comfortable or confident performing at the lower level because they used to do it and they were rewarded and, for their performance at that level, or the leader's uncertain that the team members are able to do the job that they've been assigned. And so as senior leaders now, I think we need to ask ourselves, is the problem with our team member or is it with ourselves? And I think from my perspective and in human resources, for me, clear responsibility and authority timelines are critical. Many organizations don't think about authority in terms of timelines, but I think it really helps simplify what level is responsible for the matter. For example,
well, you're going to go into an example. I was curious what would be how. By the way, your answer. I want to tell you that your answer about why leaders micromanage is remarkably simple, but yet remarkably insightful and profound, because I never really thought about it as really one of those two things. And even our Suzanne, our producer, is going, yeah, because she used to work in the restaurant business and probably saw that too in herself and in others. It's like, is it about them? Is it about me? Could be potentially both. So what's an example of how that came to be and how it got straightened out in your situation?
So I love putting in timelines for leaders. And so because it does simplify things. So for example, in every organization and their time perspectives on, which level needs to work at what timelines are going to be a little different, but I'm going to share the one example.
Yeah.
So if vice presidents are asked to create 3 to 5 year goals and objectives, then they should be working and thinking 3 to 5 years out. Directors then should be thinking 1 to 3 years out. Managers should be thinking 1 year out, and supervisors should be thinking, for example, a month out. So when everyone understands their timelines that they should be focused on, it simplifies the discussion with any leader who's working on matters that would be better handled closer to the front line. So let's say you're a leader that has the potential to feel more comfortable solving problems that should be handled closer to the front line. You need to start asking yourself, does the problem have the potential to affect the timeline I'm responsible for? If I'm a director, is this issue going to impact us a year to 3 years out? If the answer is no, then leave the problem to the appropriate frontline leader.
Yeah.
But if the answer is yes, depending on what happens, it might affect my timeline in the future that I'm responsible for. Then start the conversation with the frontline leader by sharing why you're choosing to be involved and how your responsibility timelines are both affected. Then the two of you can work collaboratively to resolve the issue. That way you're educating and mentoring the frontline leader instead of micromanaging them, and they start to get a pattern and consistency in what they can expect from you on, no, Seanna won't come in and involve herself in my decision making unless there's a potential that it's going to affect her timeline, which is clearly 1 to 3 years.
Nice.
People then start to get more comfortable and psychologically safe making decisions on their own and knowing that they're going to be trusted in the organization.
Yeah, that's gold right there. That's gold right there, Seanna. Thank you so much. I always think there's going to be some nugget I'm going to get out of the podcast, and you've already contributed to my intellectual property and capital. So thank you for that. Unfortunately, we do not pay royalties, but I definitely am giving you thanks for that. And I think that's very helpful for other people. The other thing I want to draw out for the audience is I think you've picked up from Seanna's discussion as well. Like she talked about early on, people seeing something in her and backing her up. And we've heard that from other guests before. So if you're a leader in a position where you can challenge other people and you can have some confidence in them to take on a challenge, that itself is very helpful. And by the way, if you're an individual contributor, ask yourself, what would my manager say about me behind closed doors in terms of an opportunity that comes up? What do people say about you when you're not around that might be helping you advance your career? So thank you for that, Seanna. One of the things I wanted to explore with you, since we're really, by the way, you can already hear this from Seanna, is she's able to do that dance between the strategic and the practical, which is excellent and not very common. I wondered, Seanna, when you think about organizational elements or groups not necessarily being aligned, but having their own goals and objectives and plans, have you seen some of? First of all, have you seen some of that, and what have you found really tries to bring those disparate groups all trying to make their objectives happen to come together in some sort of unified way?
Without a doubt, I think every organization is going to move through peaks and valleys where they find that there is greater alignment and then there's misalignment. And sometimes it's linked to what, is being measured or rewarded or operational priorities. Every organization needs to find their unique way to do it. But I did have one phenomenal learning experience in one of my roles. I had the opportunity to work in the cannabis sector as laws in Canada were transitioning to make cannabis production, manufacturing, and sales legal in Canada for the first time. So I started in the organization before we knew if it was fully, going to be legalized. It was an established and well-respected medicinal brand already. And the goal was to expand production into Ontario and across multiple countries. In 3 years, they wanted to, grow the organization and eventually become a publicly traded company. And I was brought in as the third employee kind of in Ontario. Yeah. And in the 3 years, we grew to over 500 employees in Ontario and did reach the public trading potential. But during those 3 years of high growth in a rapidly changing industry, where HR's kind of hair was on fire every single day and was exciting, I also experienced an organization that had the most incredible alignment to operational priorities. Yeah. Every team member that had joined our team had taken a leap of faith to come work in a new industry. Yeah. They were excited about our goals. The objectives were always clear. Leadership consistently shared quarterly targets for each site in person, and they clearly outlined what was required to achieve them. Every operational decision that we worked on clearly mapped to what our quarterly target was, and we didn't touch what wasn't going to be measured. So every goal was explained in a clear and easy to understand and tangible term. And at the end of each quarter, the results were always shared with positive feedback, again, in person, if we hit our goals or we didn't hit our goals. And this is what we learned, and this is what we need to do differently going forward. So simply put, because we didn't do anything that was not aligned to our goals, all our energy was focused on those goals. And it resulted in this incredible team all coming together for high growth, high rewards. And looking back, I would say it was the most exciting and inspiring place I've worked. It was also the most exhausting. Yeah. And you can't sustain that for more than 3 years. Yeah. But as a leader, finding those opportunities for clear communication and bringing your team together and what can we all, work towards that we'll be proud of, I think can create better alignment.
Oh, and I would agree. By the way, great take on it, and interesting that you even raised this idea of like if you've ever had in your career you're working in intensity, and a good example of that is some people have maybe either worked in a high growth business like you were in, where everything is new, but they really did a good job of keeping everything on track. I would say the automotive industry often creates people to go into these panic states. And if you live in the automotive world for a while and parts supply, you're used to living under stress, and you don't really even realize it till you move to another organization, which is a little slower paced and not as pushy. So I think what I can take from that, Seanna, is that organizations can take these tidbits of how to have this intensity and alignment, whether or not they need to move at that pace or not. Because even you're admitting that even when things are good, it still takes a lot out of you, even though you achieved a lot and did it in a way that was something you admired as well. Seanna, we've covered a lot of ground already today. I just wondered whether there's any last thoughts that you wanted to share before we wrap up.
No, I think we covered a lot of great things. Thank you again for inviting me to do this. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the training that you deliver. You have made our leaders over the years much more ready and able to handle frontline leadership in an effective way, and I'm incredibly thankful for the efforts that you and your organization continue to do.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Well, you impressed me the first time we met, and then impressed me even more today in our interview. So thank you so much. Again, we've been talking to Seanna Pickard, and if you were going to look her up on LinkedIn, Seanna is spelled Seanna. And she works for Federal Bridge, which is a Crown Corporation in Canada, managing several of the border crossings. If you want to learn more about Federal Bridge, you can do that at federalbridge.ca. So, Seanna, thank you so much for being our guest on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And as a listener, thank you for, the most precious thing anyone can give, I think, is their attention. And so thank you for giving us a little bit of your attention. We're hoping that from that attention that you give to the podcast, you gain something of value that you can bring forward in your career. And if there's something that we can do to help your organization, it all starts with a conversation. All the great stuff starts with an idea and a conversation, and you can reach out to us at uniquedevelopment.com. For now, I'll just say best wishes for your success on your leadership journey.